we're gonna be building the Venmo clone with Solidity and Infura. This is going to be a very powerful dApp that you're gonna learn how to build from scratch. We're gonna be coding up the React part along with the smart contract and the blockchain part. There are a lot of concepts you're going to master as a result of this, from blockchain concepts to programming concepts. But more importantly, I think you're gonna have a lot of fun, and you're gonna learn that building blockchain apps don't have to be a painful experience. They can actually be quite a pleasant experience. So while my fire is burning behind me, let's have a fireside app building session. With that said, smash that like button, turn it blue or white, depending on if you're on the light theme or the dark theme on YouTube. Subscribe to the channel, because this is where we help you become a developer and a Web3 developer. And let's get straight into the video. Step number uno, which is we're going to sign up on Infura. It is completely free. It is an RPC node provider, and it will make your life so easy, okay? So that's what we're gonna use when we're building our dApp. So go ahead to the link below that we've provided for you, okay? Use that special link. That way we'll know that you're coming from this video. It will be helpful for Infura to know this. And yeah, just click the link in the description below. Okay, it's going to be infura.io, whatever. That's going to be the link. Click that below and go to this page right here. Hit sign up once you're on this page, all right? And then just create an account. So I'm just going to create my account right here. Hit resend email, so it'll send you a confirmation. Go to your email address. Go ahead and confirm that bad boy. Once you're done, it's going to send you to this page. Pick your role. So let's say you're an engineer, okay, / developer, solo freelance, whatever, and pick your category and then just hit next. All right, now you're going to create your first project. So you're going to do Web3 API, formerly Ethereum. And the last part you're going to do is my first project. Name it whatever you want. I'm just calling it my first project, okay? All right, so there you go. Now we don't need to touch this in here, okay? Everything you can leave as is, because we're going to use an extension later called Truffle. And that will allow us to interact with Infura and pull all of this information, okay? So there you go. Your project should be created in here, my first project, okay? And that's effectively it, okay? So make sure you go ahead and do that, and I'll see you in a second. All right, so here is the demo of this app. So take a look at it, right? I am here on my Venmo clone. The first thing I need to do is actually go ahead and connect my wallet. So I'm just gonna type in my password on MetaMask and log in. Once I am logged in, I'll connect both of my, any of one of my accounts. So I'll just start with the account one in this case. Once I'm in, you could see on the left-hand side that I have all these transactions going through, and it's showing the notes as well. So here, what we're gonna do is I'm logged in currently, okay? So you could see my MetaMask wallet, and you can see that I'm connected, okay? And here's my other account. So here's account 2, right? And then here's my first account. And I'll paste in the second account that I want to send my money to, and I will drop a message, okay? You could send your Ethereum to really anybody that you want, but I'm just going to send it to this address. I'm going to say, here's some money. Now MetaMask opens up and it asks, hey, do you want to do this? Are you sure? Blah, blah, blah. Yes, I'm sure. I'm going to put in my password. All right. It's telling us about the gas fees. Let's hit accept. Okay, it's doing a little loading. All right, blah, 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 contract interaction, go down, hit confirm, and we'll wait a couple of seconds here. Okay, let's wait. And it says pending, so I'll speed it up. Contract interaction. Okay, we'll speed it up, and boom, it's done. Look at that on the left-hand side. It loaded right away, and it says, here's some money. And you can see it says 4 seconds ago. That is beautiful. Okay, and again, now I can switch the account as well. So I could go to a completely different account, okay? And I could send money to the other account. So I can change accounts and send money to wherever I want. Okay, so I'll refresh. You can see that the account just changed over here. Okay, it's a completely different account, as you can see. Let's keep going. I'll paste the account number, and I'll say thanks for the money, and I'll send some money in return. Okay, thanking the person for sending me some money. There we go. And now we'll hit confirm, and let's wait for it. Sending, and I'll hit speed up. Contract interaction is done. And look at that. Right away, it shows up all the way at the bottom, right? It says, thanks for the money. Beautiful. So there you go. I hope that you're excited about this project. This will be the Venmo clone that you will be building. I hope you're excited. It's going to be happening with Solidity. So with that said, let's just rock and roll. And right before we get started, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to give a huge shout out to this man right over here. I'm new to the screen thing, but JavaScript Mastery. A lot of the smart contract part is from his video called Crypt, where he built the Crypt portfolio. So definitely check it out. We'll link in the description below. It is an awesome resource. And on top of that, we built our own styling and everything and then converted it into this beautiful Venmo app that you see in this video. So with that said, let's get back into the video. Shout out JS Mastery. All right, now open up your command line and let's go ahead. And what we're going to do is I want you to just write npx clever programmer. This is a clever programmer NPM package that we have made. And the benefit of this package is really that it actually gives you everything you need. So we're giving away the styling, a bunch of the app, assets, and we just make the whole app really, really simple for you. All you have to do is just type in that command. It will install it for you, okay? And once you're done installing it, make sure that it's gonna ask you, hey, what's your email address? So just pop in your email address. And then after that, it's going to ask you for your name and it's going to ask you for what project you would like to initialize. So for example, in this case, we're building the Venmo app. So make sure to just initialize Venmo. It will initialize a whole bunch of helpful files for you so that we don't have to spend a bajillion years trying to build this app. You know, the styling will already be done. We'll do the interesting, more fun Infura / Web3 Solidity parts, okay? Is this really the focus of this video, right? So boom, there we go. Now it's installing it and setting it up on your computer, it's getting the dependencies for you. So this is the magic of when you set it up with npx clever programmer, okay? It's gonna basically start the project and it's going to automatically open it up for you, okay? If it's giving you some kind of error or whatever, just understand that all we've done is we've cloned the repo, put it on your computer, so you could point and click and kind of go inside of it as well if you wanted to, okay? So let's go ahead and now see what is happening. All right, now that the project is opened up, what I want you to do is just open up the terminal and I want you to type in yarn start. That will start your server, okay? That'll start your project. Now just go ahead and I want you to open up your localhost 3000, okay? And you could put it on the side of your computer like this, all right? So on the left-hand side, your server is running. On the right-hand side, your app should be up and running. So that's where you should be at. And let's go to index.js, okay? And you can also go into your app.js and you can see that this is a regular React file, right? Pretty much vanilla, except the only difference is really we've given you a lot of the styling. All right, so let's keep rocking and rolling here. Okay, on the left-hand side, you will see in source, you have assets, components, and styles. And normally you won't have assets or components. Like that's something we've created for you and given you. And in styles, we've created extra styling for you as well. Okay, so that's the structure. So we're gonna go into our app.js and we're gonna delete everything anything that's inside of that class name app div. Okay, go ahead and remove everything. So now your app should be this blank canvas. We're gonna get rid of that logo.svg as well. We don't need that. Let's refresh. And again, your app should just be not giving you any errors, but also not really showing you anything. Okay. Now inside of that div, we're gonna basically just put in hello world. And once you do that, that is enough for this part. We're already ready to get started with the Web3 and Truffle and Infura part. I hope you're excited. Let's just get to it. All right, so here we are. Now we're gonna be getting onto the Truffle part. Okay, we're gonna be setting Truffle up and we're gonna be setting Infura up. So let's go. Here, now in the main directory, what I want you to do is create a new folder. Okay, and we're gonna call it backend, AKA blockchain part. So in this case, our backend part is really going to be our blockchain part, AKA our smart contract part. Okay. So let's go into our backend. But what's cool about this when you're in the blockchain world is like, you don't really need to deal with Firebase or it's funny I'm saying Firebase and I have fire behind me. But like, you know, your backend isn't the traditional MongoDB or Firebase. Your backend is the blockchain. Okay. That's where you're storing your data majority of the times. All right, let's go ahead. Okay, so let's go ahead and now I want you to type in truffle init. Okay, and before we actually do that, let's go ahead and make sure we're in our backend. So go ahead and do cd backend for me. Once you're in there, I want you to type in Truffle init. By the way, quick thing, if you don't have Truffle installed, put in this command right here, and that will install Truffle for you. And if that doesn't work, Google it. With that said, let's keep on going. Okay, so after you do Truffle init, it will pretty much set this up for you, okay, and kind of initialize the repository for you. On the left-hand side, a couple of things should happen, okay? You should have this contracts part, the migrations part, and test part get built out, and Truffle config should start showing up. So before, your backend should have been empty, but after doing this, you should have these 3 folders plus that 1 file ready to go. Okay, now inside of your contracts, you have something called migrations. Okay, so that's what's going to be there. And then also you have a migration folder that will have your initial migration. Okay, this is what you're going to be using pretty much to deploy your contracts afterwards as well. So all of this information is pretty important. Now inside of your contracts, you're going to create a new file, and that's where we're actually going to create our smart contract. Okay, so let's go ahead and call it transactions.sol.sol. Okay, SOL is short for Solidity. And then we're just going to put in a little license here, and we're going to say SPDX, okay, dash license. And since this one is not licensed, the identifier we're going to pass it is unlicensed. Okay, and then that warning at the top, you know, is basically taken care of. So you could just say, hey, it's unlicensed. That's totally fine. All right, next up, we're going to go ahead and make a contract, and we're going to call it transactions. All right, now that we got our transactions contract, we're just going to leave it at the blank right now, okay? And then what we're going to do is, here's what I want you to do, okay? I want you to go ahead and get this extension Truffle, okay? So at the bottom left, you see that I have this Truffle extension, okay, right over here. Okay, that's the extension that I want you to get. All right, so what you're going to do is go to your extensions. You can also do Command-Shift-X or Control-Shift-X. Go into your extensions, type in Truffle, and just go ahead and install Truffle. Okay, Truffle for VS Code, this one right here. And then once you have it installed, go to your Truffle extension. Okay, and this is going to make your life really easy when you're developing. This is really nice. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and hit connect to network, and then it's going to ask you, do you want to use the Ganache service, or you want to use the Infura service, or other? The one we want to use is we want to use the Infura service right over here. Okay, so go ahead, choose Infura, and then I want you to go ahead and choose sign in. So let's go ahead, click sign in, and then just simply sign into your Infura account. Okay, if you don't have an Infura account, just make a new Infura account, because you're going to need that for this app. And excuse my dog, she's a little crazy bulldog and she's wild, so she'll be barking in the back, but we'll ignore her. All right, here you have this little error thing showing up. You could ignore that. It's not important here, okay? It pops up all the time, but it doesn't really matter. All right, all this stuff pops up here, and all I want you to do now is simply just go scroll to the bottom and hit authorize. Okay, now that that's done, it says you are signed in. You can now close this page. So simply go ahead, close this page, okay? And now at the top here, it's gonna ask you to put in the project name, okay? Right over yonder, boom, right there, okay? So go ahead, put in your project name. So I'm gonna just simply say Venmo clone or whatever, okay? So let's go ahead and write that in, Venmo clone. All right, and then hit enter, and then we're gonna just make this project public because there's no reason to make it private. Okay, and now you can see on the left-hand side, we can see Infura service showing up. And now I'm gonna go to infura.io, and on here, let's go ahead and click Start Innovating button. Okay, so go ahead and click that, and right when we click it, you could see that there's a Venmo clone. Okay, this is the one that we created from our command line little tool thing that popped up over here. And now it says this project is active. It was created today, and boom. Okay, this is good to go. Right now, it should have 0 requests. Okay, and on the left-hand side, you could see that if you click your Infura service and Venmo clone, you could see all the networks you have access to. So mainnet, you have access to Gorley, Rinkeby, Rospen, and then layer 2, you have access to all these other main and test nets. Okay, so with that said, you've done a wonderful job. Now we're gonna move on, and we're gonna start working on the smart contract. So let's get to that in the next part. All right, here we go. Now we're on the fun part. We're going to be making our own contract. Okay, so let me take the photo away, and I'll show you why I have that photo in just a second. But let's go ahead and work on our smart contract here. Okay, so let's go inside of transactions, and I'm going to add in a very specific version of Solidity here. So we're going to go ahead and choose a specific version of Solidity. So I'm going to put a caret and do 0.8.15. Okay, that's the version I want you to use. And usually the first line of code in any Solidity app is usually that. Pragma, Solidity, blah, 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 put your version. Okay, so go ahead and do that. Then inside of my contract, I want to do a uint256, and I want to have transaction count. This variable here will be keeping track of how many total transactions we have at any given time. All right, let's keep going. Now, just so you understand what I mean by this, okay, I'm going to bring this into the view. So remember, in our finished version of the app, we'll have a transaction or a transfer, and then we'll have multiple transactions. So that transaction count will be keeping track of how many times the user, for example, sends a particular, sends transactions, right? So if we have sent 5 or 10 transactions and all users have sent 10 transactions, then the transaction count will be 10. So just keeping global track of the count of transactions. Okay, the next up, what we're gonna do is we're gonna create an event that will be fired when a transaction is made. Okay, so for example, we're gonna say event, and I'm gonna say transfer, and here's what I want transfer to do. So I wanna show who the transfer is from, okay, the receiver, okay, who received the transaction, the amount of the transaction, and the message of the transaction. And just so you can understand what this means, from is going to be this address of the user that's logged in, okay? Receiver is gonna be who you're sending it to. Amount is going to be the amount that you want to send, and then the message is going to be this right here, okay? But now when you're using languages like Solidity or whatever, you have to define data types. So I know that this is a string data type, so I'm going to say string. The amount I know is going to be an integer, okay? So I'm going to go ahead and say int. All right, now if you have a little bit of programming experience, you might be like, wait a minute, Kazi, how the heck is amount a uint, by the way, is unsigned integer, meaning it could be negative. And you might be like, wait, how the heck is an integer if this is 0.002? Under the hood, everything is being calculated in the smallest denominator in Ethereum, which is way. So a way is a much smaller number. So under the hood, it's not actually in decimals. It's just showing you here in decimals because this is not in way. Okay, so there's actually no float type in Solidity, which is pretty interesting, but yeah. All right, and then we're good with adding all of that stuff. And the last thing we're gonna add in our event actually is the timestamp. So that thing is the thing that's not visible right now. So for example, timestamp isn't showing up in anywhere in any of those, okay? So timestamp, what we're doing is under the hood, right when the user hits send, we're gonna log that time. So let's just say it's like, it's 12:33 a.m. and this dude is sending some money to his friend for cleaning. What kind of friend does he have that cleans at 12:33 a.m.? I don't know. He's sending the friend some money for some shit. Okay, we don't know what it is. He maybe gave him some food, and now he's paying his friend at 12:33 a.m. And that timestamp we're gonna log, and it's gonna get logged low key under the hood, and we're gonna pop that in right there. Okay, that is gonna be attached to right when the user clicks send. Okay, just to kind of give you a little insight onto what we're doing here. All right, now the next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna create a struct, okay, of the transaction that we will be storing on chain. Okay, and structs is kind of an ugly name, and it makes things sound confusing, but it's really just a structure or like a data type here. And so we're just gonna say, hey, when you see a transaction or a transfer, this is the type of stuff it's gonna have inside of it, okay? So expect it to have a sender, expect it to have a receiver, expect it to have an amount, expect it to have a message, and expect it to have a timestamp, okay? That's all what we're saying here. That's all. The rest of what we're saying here is about these data types, okay? So the main thing I want you to notice is sender, receiver, amount, message, timestamp. Those are all the things that are happening here, okay? Now, what is this other stuff? Address is a specific data type inside of Solidity, when for wallets, it understands it when you say address. Okay, same thing for the receiver. It's not just a string, so it understands how addresses work underneath the hood. All right, and then amount is an int. String message is a string, and then timestamp, we're gonna make it a int 256. Now you might be wondering, why is this int 256 and why is this int just by itself? If you don't say 256 and you just use int like this, by default, it's actually int 256. Okay, so both of these here are actually int 256. Okay, so that's really the one thing I want to clarify here. Okay, beautiful. So now that we're done with that, now we're going to create an array of those transactions. Okay, so the struct that we make, we're going to make an array out of that. So let's go ahead. I'm going to say transfer struct, and let's go ahead and rename it and call it transfer struct. The reason why we're going to call it that is so it's very clear that it is a struct. Okay, and then when you get better as a developer, you could just call it transfer, or you could call it transaction. Okay, that should be fine. Now we're going to create a variable called transactions, and here's the interesting part about this. Okay, we're declaring a variable called transactions, but we're saying that this variable here is going to be an array of transfer structs, meaning it's probably going to look like an array. Okay, an array. And it's going to contain these transfer struct objects. So it's going to basically contain, if you're a JavaScript or a React person, imagine this. So imagine I have my receiver, and the receiver is 0x blah, blah, blah. I have my sender, 0x blah, blah. I have my, not sender, I believe it's from. It's one of those. And then I have my, let's say, my message, and it's hello. Okay. And then, and that's just like one transfer struct, let's say. Okay, and I know the transfer struct has some more stuff, but let's just say for simplicity's sake, this is one transfer struct, and then there's more transfer structs. So in a classic JavaScript scenario, imagine that you really have an array of objects, okay? And more specifically, the objects will represent the transfer struct, meaning that whatever keys the transfer struct has, these objects will have. And if you don't put that in, if you have an object that doesn't have those keys, it'll error out. Okay, so there's a lot of type safety into the code, and that way your code will have less bugs and errors, but at the cost of like really being very verbose and explicit upfront. Cool. Okay, so let's keep going. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna make a function to add a transaction to the array, to the blockchain, okay, with our struct. So let's create this function, and we're going to call it add to blockchain. But really what this function is doing is adding, essentially it's adding a transaction to the blockchain. That's what we're doing. We're going to create so the variable here that we're creating is called receiver. All right, so here the actual variable here is receiver. Okay, that's the main thing. These two are think of them like data types. Okay, address is a data type, and payable is a special keyword that makes it so you could actually pay the receiver. That's it. Okay, let's keep going. So address, payable, receiver. Then we're going to have an amount. We're going to have our message as well. Okay, so, but for this one, we're going to say string memory message. Don't ask me why you have to say memory. If you don't write memory, you'll get an error. So just write memory. String memory message. Okay. All right. Then all we want to do is we want to say public, meaning that even outside of the smart contract, you should be able to actually call this function. So we have access to it, all right? And payable keyword means, okay, that the receiver is actually able to receive ether from the sender. Okay, so something I said earlier, but this is just to make it really verbose and clear for you. And Copilot wants to do a lot of stuff, but we're gonna skip that. Now, here's what happens in this function. When we are in this function, what we wanna do is when a user calls this function, meaning you're calling your function add transaction, right? Well, the first thing we want to do is we want to increment the transaction count by 1, right? That should be obvious. It's like I'm adding a new transaction to the blockchain, increment the count of and the number of transactions, okay? And then what I want you to do is take the transactions array that I created earlier, push a new transaction to it, okay? And all we're pushing to that array is literally from my JavaScript world, okay? My JavaScript peeps, you're literally just sending an object, okay? This object is going to be like, sender 0x something, receiver 0x something, message, hello, whatever, okay? Timestamp, some Unix timestamp, okay? So that's all you're sending, okay? So this over here is a constructor. Transfer struct here is a constructor. And once you pass it all of this information, it's going to literally make an object for you at the end of the day. That's all it's doing. And message.sender, just in case you're wondering what it is, when you're signing with MetaMask, so like when you're doing this thing with MetaMask, right? Where you're literally signing. Yeah. That is what refers to the message.sender. Okay, so the dude that's logged in with MetaMask and hitting send and then hitting confirm, it's pulling that dude's account address, okay, from message.sender. Now, if you're wondering how it's pulling the receiver, it's pulling, okay, so this is the sender, and then this guy who we're sending it to is the receiver, okay? The amount that we have, okay, wherever the amount is, let's just say that's the amount. That's going to be the amount that it's pulling. And then the message is whatever message you wrote in. And the timestamp is like the exact moment you added it to the blockchain. Okay, so that's why we're getting it from that special keyword block. And this MSG is also a special keyword in Solidity. So both of these, block and MSG, is a special keyword. Okay, my big head is blocking some of that stuff. So there you go. That's what I was showing you. Like that little transaction there is the amount. Okay, now I'm going to hide it again because I like myself being huge, like a big giant on the screen. So I'm going to make this small and I will hide it away from you, and I'll just bring this back for now. And let's keep going. Okay. All right. And then next up, what we're going to do is we're going to emit the event we actually created earlier. So we want to emit the transfer event we created. Okay. So let's go ahead and just emit that event. We're going to give it the sender, receiver, amount, message, block, timestamp, and all that good stuff. It's the equivalent of doing the, a console log, let's say. All right. So let's keep going over here. And we got our amount. We got all of that. Okay. I'm just going to check if I'm on the right Solidity version. I am. Yep. So there you go. That's your emit event that you're going to have there. Okay. Now we're going to write a function to actually get all of the transactions from the blockchain. So let's go ahead and do that. So I'm going to call this function get all transactions, and I'm going to give it a public view, and we're going to return a transfer struct. That's the data type we're going to return, and we're going to actually return. So think of like we're going to return an array of objects, and the array of objects is going to be of type transfers or transactions. Okay. And we're just going to put memory there because if you don't put that, you get an error. So just put it. Okay. And then we're just going to return transactions at the end of the day. And yep. And then we're going to make another function. And this function is going to get the number of transactions. And we'll say get transaction count. Okay. And again, it's going to be a public function. And it's a view. So for a view, we're telling the blockchain, hey, there's no transaction happening here. We're not going to be changing the data. So you don't need to charge us here for anything. It's just going to be a view. And then public is so you can access it from outside. Returns is what data type and what specific things are we going to return. So we're going to return an integer. And then I can just go ahead and say return transaction count. And that's about it. So yeah. And then lastly, what I want to, just explain really is the view keyword, right? That basically means that the function can only be used to view the data. All right. That's all that means. All right. And that means that no ether is needed to run this function. Okay. That's something that I want to highlight to you. With that said, we are done with the contract part. Now we just sit back, we watch the firework, and it's time to deploy the contract. Let's go. All right, now that you've made the contract, it's time to deploy your contract, okay? It would be kind of like if you had all this wood behind you, but you never lit it on fire, okay? If you didn't do that, what's the point of having a fireplace? It's useless. So when you have a contract, there's no point to just having a contract. It's like having a bunch of wood. We gotta deploy it, okay? We gotta add the fire. We gotta turn it into a fireplace. And that's what makes it usable by everybody in the world, including yourself. So let's go and do that now. So what I'm going to do, the first thing inside of contracts, you see transaction here. I'm going to hover over it and I'm going to right click. Okay. I'm going to right click. And what that will allow me to do. All right. So now what we're going to actually do is inside of our migrations folder, we're going to create a new file. Okay. So let's go ahead and let's create a new file. And before we do that, go into your one_initial migration, copy everything inside of that. And then I want you to go ahead, make a new file, to_deploy.js, paste all of that. And everywhere it says migrations, we're going to change that with transactions. Okay. So you could also do right click and rename all occurrences, or you could just do this in this fancy way. You could use a shortcut Command D, which on Windows, I believe might be Control D. That right there, okay? That should allow you to do that multi-select on everything. Let's keep going. And now what we're gonna do is we're going to right click on our transactions right here, okay? And I'm going to choose Build Contracts. Now, if you're wondering, how do I have this build contracts right here? It's only possible, you guys, if you have this Truffle extension, okay? If you don't have the Truffle extension, okay, this extension right over here, if you don't have that, the build contract right here will not show up, okay? So make sure you have it, okay? So we're gonna hit build contracts. Now my contract has started building. So we'll keep going through it, okay? It's gonna take a second to build. And here's what happened. Okay, I just ran into a little bit of an error. Let's go ahead and I'm going to choose Truffle for VS Code. So go click output and then here choose Truffle for VS Code so we can actually see what the error is, okay? And here we're checking to find what the error is, and it says, hey, there might be something you need to fix in Truffle config. So I'll show you what we need to do. So first choose Truffle for VS Code. Scroll down till you can see the error, and you can see the error says Truffle is currently using Solidity version 0.8.11, and it does not match what we have inside of our file right there. So let's go ahead to our Truffle config.js right here and fix this problem. Okay, so let's go Truffle config. And scroll down to line 84-ish, and where it says version, you see it says 0.8.11. Go ahead and change that to 0.8.15. Okay, so we're gonna go choose, just put a 5 there. Let's hit save. Okay, and now let's try to deploy this again and see if it works. Okay, it's going through, and let's see. Okay, it looks like we have a build folder now that's starting to show stuff. So that's a really good sign. And there we go. You could see it says compiled successfully using Sol version 0.8.15. Okay, so our contract is now it's built. Now what we need to do is let's go ahead and right click on transactions. And this time we're going to choose deploy contracts. So let's choose that. Okay, now here I make an error, okay? So I choose the Ropsten network, but I don't want you to choose the Ropsten network. Do not choose this, choose Gwirly. Okay, so I want you to choose the Gwirly network. That's the one. Okay, that's the one I want you to pick. Don't pick Ropsten. Just want to make that super, super, super clear. So in your case, you should be picking that guy right over there, Gwirly. Once you click it, it's going to ask you to paste your mnemonic. Now, remember earlier in the video, when you made your wallet with MetaMask, that's when it gives you a mnemonic. It tells you to write it down. So grab that mnemonic that it gave you, and I want you to bring that here and paste it here. Okay, so we're going to paste our mnemonic now, and it's going to ask you to save it. Now you can save it anywhere you want. Okay, so I'll just go to my own folder here, and I'm just going to hit key.env, and there we go. We've saved it. And at the bottom, you should see it's saying deploying contracts. Okay, and your project name is going to be different than mine. For you, it should say deploying contracts to Venmo clone. Okay, I just had to create another project because I was getting some errors or whatever, but hopefully you won't be getting errors. If you are also getting the same errors, then it might actually help you to create a new project. Okay, so just a little note for you. And pretty soon, this deploying will be completed, and it is. Okay, so now that the deployment is completed, it gives you this very important contract address. You're going to need access to this. So hover onto this, and I want you to copy it. Okay, this is a very important contract address. And then I want you to go ahead and grab this contract address. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab this contract address. And what we're going to do is we're going to make in our source folder, we're going to make a new folder, and we're going to call it, not a new file, we're going to make a new folder. We'll call it utils. Okay, and inside of utils, I'm going to make constants. And inside of there, I'm going to save a new constant file. It's going to be called constants.js. And inside of this file, we're going to make a contract address, and we're going to paste the contract address in front of it. Now, a little note for you. Just put const here. I forgot to put that. Okay, so just put const contract address, and we'll come back to this file and we'll fill it out completely. Okay. All right. So with that said, right now you're doing great. Your contract is deployed. So congratulations, because that's a huge part of the process. And at this point, we're pretty much done with the smart contract blockchain part pretty much completely. And now we're going to do the fun front end part where we're going to connect to this back end. And then now we're going to really make the app sing. So I hope you're excited. I'll see you in a second. All right, now what we're going to be building is going to be the Nav Bar. Okay, so it's going to be the Nav Bar we're going to build for our project. This is what it's going to look like. So boom, right there. Okay, that's what it's going to look like right there. So that's the target. That's what we're building. Remember, it's not built yet. Okay, it's just a photo. So I'm going to leave that here as a target of what we're building. Or actually, let's leave that here. So that could be like a use as a reference point. Okay. So now let's go ahead and build it together. All right, first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go inside of source. Okay. Inside there, let's go into our app.js. And inside my app, what I want to do is let's go ahead and remove everything from the top. And I'm going to say import style from ./style/app.module.css. Okay. That's where a lot of the styling we've already written for you, so it's in there. Go ahead and call the class. We're going to use this a wrapper, okay, and we're going to inside of our wrapper we're going to put in our header, and inside of our header we'll put in our nav bar. Okay, now no nav bar is going to show up, so once I hit run on this, we're going to when we do yarn start, we're going to get an error. Okay. And the reason why we're gonna get an error is because we never imported it. Okay, so let me actually move this a little bit out of the way here. As you could see, hey, nav bar is not defined. So now what we want to do is in components, you could actually see that we have created nav bar inside of components, right? So we're just gonna go ahead, import that right over there. Import nav bar from ./components/nav bar. Okay. And now that it's imported, let's go into our nav bar. We're not getting an error anymore. Let's build out our nav bar from scratch. Let's get in our nav bar styles that we've already made. And for this nav, we're going to say navigation container for styles. Okay. And then we're going to make a container div inside. And then inside of that, we're going to use a logo image class, logo container rather. Okay, and then we run that and we get an error. All right, so let's go ahead. We're getting an error here, right? This is not loading the logo. We'll fix that in a second. First, let's just go ahead and give it a class name. And we're going to say styles.logo image for the style on this, okay? And let's fix this source. So we're going to change this source to /assets / Venmo logo.svg. Still not loading, okay? So let's drag the assets folder and we'll move the assets folder inside of our public folder. There we go. And now we change it. Now we run and look at that. Venmo is showing up. That is beautiful. Okay. So let's continue. All right. Now we're going to add in an actions container and we're going to say hello. And then we're going to give it an accent color. And this is where the user address will go. So we're going to say hello, comma, user address. Okay. And remember, right, we're mapping it to this one. That's our reference point. So we got that part. Now we got the hello part. Okay. And then we have the user address there. Now we're going to put a hand wave. And last but not least, we do need to put the image, the circular image that we have. So let's go ahead and do that. Okay. So we're going to first get our down icon. Okay. Because we need that icon for right here. Okay, so let's call our chevron down icon. Let's give it a arrow down icon styling. And let's make it a self-closing tag. Okay, now we're getting an error. Can't resolve hero icons. So obviously what we need to do is we need to install this package right here. And let's run it. Cool. Now it's showing up. So you should have this package already installed. When you do npx clever programmer, you get all the dependencies installed by default. So just make sure you add in the /outline and then you should be good to go. All right, the last thing we need to add is the image. So let's go and do styles.avatar container. So I'll make a new div. And then inside of this div, we're going to put an image. And this image, we're going to give it an avatar image style, make it a self-closing tag as well. And the source, okay, is going to be this specific source right here at yikiang.me/avatar.jpg. Okay, you can get your image from wherever you want. Yap is somebody who just works with us on the Clever Programmer team. And so that's the image we're using. You could use your image or anybody else's image, right? And boom, look at that. Okay, let's get to the end of this. Boom, right? If I show you this, look at that, right? We started with that reference and we got pretty much a 1-to-1 match. So that is absolutely phenomenal. We are done with our Nav Bar. And now it's time to move on and add our wallet connection. Let's go. Now what we want to work on is the MetaMask Connect wallet functionality. So basically we want to be able to do this thing, okay, where it'll pop up, connect with MetaMask. It'll ask for your account. You'll be able to hit next and then move on to the next part. Okay, so let's go ahead and start working on this bad boy now. There's no front end part to this, so just letting you know that this is going to be mostly a back end thing we're going to be doing for connecting to wallet, because this front end is MetaMask's like default front end when you open MetaMask. Okay. All right, so make a new folder called context, and you're going to make it inside of your source. Okay, inside of this context, I want you to hit new file, and then in there, we're going to put context.js. All right, go ahead and import use effect, and we're going to put in use state and create context from React. Okay, just like that. And then go ahead and do import ethers from ethers, because we're going to need access to that. Okay, and let's go ahead and do export const transaction context, okay, and create context. So we're going to need access to all this data in our other files. That's why we're creating this context here, so we can do that. All right, we're going to create a transaction provider here, which is going to take in children. Children is going to be the entire app. And what I'm going to say is I'm going to hit return, and I'm going to say transaction context.provider. And we're going to give it a value. And right now we're going to leave the value kind of empty. Okay. And we're just going to pass in children in between. And make sure you have the tag saying transaction context.provider. Okay. That's what the tags should be saying. All right. Let's go back. Yep. Let's go right there. And in our index.js, what we're going to do is let's go and do transaction provider from /context/context. And we're going to create a transaction provider in our index.js and wrap up the entire app inside of it. Okay, that's what we're doing. So make sure you put your app here, transaction provider, and import your transaction provider from context. With that said, let's go back to our context, and we're gonna keep track of the current account, and we're gonna see if the current account is logged in or not. Okay, the default state is just gonna be a blank, empty string. We're gonna have a function which is gonna be check if wallet is connected. It's gonna be an async function. Okay, and what we're gonna do is we're gonna create a try catch block here, and under the catch, we're just gonna console log the error. And in the try, what I want to do is I want to say, hey, if Ethereum does not exist here, and you might be wondering, where is Ethereum coming from? We're going to destructure Ethereum from window. Window is a global JavaScript object that we have access to. And if Ethereum does not exist, then return, please connect MetaMask. That means MetaMask is not connected. Please install MetaMask. That's what the error we want to say. And then what we're going to do is we're going to create accounts, and we're going to await the Ethereum request, and the method is ETH_request accounts. And then what we want to do is we want to say if the account's length, meaning if the accounts exist, then set the first account as the main account. So maybe you choose 5 accounts. The first one you chose is the one that gets chosen, because we can only choose one account. And then if no accounts are found, we're just going to say no accounts found. Let's create a use effect hook that's going to fire off every single time the page refreshes. And we're just going to run this function, check if wallet is connected, every single time the page refreshes. Okay. Then next up, what we're going to do is we're going to create a connect wallet function. All right. Now we're going to create this connect wallet function. This is going to be pretty much copy paste. So honestly, you can copy paste. There's really just going to be a very, very minimal difference from this function and the other one. But this is more so of just a little technicality. Okay, so you're going to be writing the same thing that you just wrote. Okay, so nothing really new here. And then you could see that it popped up. So I'll remove this from here. You could see that it popped up the wallet, and you can connect to it, right? So we can see it running. We can see our connect functions running. Okay, let's keep going. And then we're going to set the current account to 0. The only difference is we're going to do a window location reload. This is just to kind of catch any edge cases and make sure there are no errors happening. So just put in the window.location.reload. You should be fine. And let's keep going. Okay, next up, what we're going to do is we're going to throw a new error if there is an error. Okay, and we're going to say no Ethereum object found. Okay, object. Okay, so make sure you pass in the connect wallet to your transaction context provider, because now your entire app will have access to the connect wallet function that you've made. Okay, so let's go back to our nav bar.jsx. Now we're going to start using all of this stuff that we got. Okay, so let's go ahead and use it. So let's make sure that, okay, everything is looking good here. Connect wallet. We want to not just get connect wallet, but we also want to get access to the current account, the current user that's logged in. So let's go ahead, import transaction context from our context. And let's get the use context hook as well from React. And then we will use the context hook. We'll pass in and we'll say, hey, we want to use our transaction context we created. We're going to destructure our current account and connect wallet from that. And then we want to wrap the entire app up in certain, in this conditional here, in this ternary operator. Okay. So we want to say, hey, if the current account is logged in, then show this, otherwise show that. All right, so I'm going to take essentially what is the home page. I'm going to cut that bad boy, and we're going to paste it in here because, hey, if the current account is logged in, then show this. Okay. Otherwise, show a button that says connect wallet. Okay. So our connect buttons, give it the styling of connect button, and then on click, we're going to say connect wallet. All right. And let's take a look at what's happening. Okay. So let's open up our MetaMask here. Let's go to our MetaMask. Let's go to where it says connected. Let's click the collapsible 3 dots and let's disconnect. Okay, so now that we disconnect, let's refresh our page and you can see that it brings up the connect wallet again. And if I remove the connect wallet, you can see that there's a button right behind it. All right, so now I'm gonna hit that next button right there. and you can see I just got connected. Okay. And basically everything that I'm doing is working. Okay. Beautiful. So our check if wallet is connected, fires off every single time we refresh the page. So there you have it. You did a fantastic job building this wallet connection so far. Next up, we're going to shorten the addresses. Let's go and do that now. The next thing we're going to be building is a shortener. So we're going to take a big address, turn it into a small one. Let's go ahead and do that. So I've drawn this out for you here. This is what we're going to be doing. We're going to take an address that looks like this, and we're going to turn it into that. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that now. So let's make a shortener. And then once we make that shortener, then what we can do is we can actually show that user address right there. Otherwise, this would be too big, right? And it wouldn't fit. So let's go to where we have user address, and I'm going to change that. And I'm going to go ahead and say current account. Okay, so now you can actually see that our app is showing us this. Okay, that's what you should be seeing right now, because pulling it directly from the current account. Now what I want to do is let's go inside of my utils, and in there I'm going to add shorten address.js, and I'm going to say export const shorten address, and it'll take in an address. And here's what it will do. Okay, so we'll say first, and then we'll create another variable called last. So first we'll just take the first 5 strings, so like 0x35d. Okay, so we're gonna put that, and then last is just gonna take the last 4 essentially. Okay, and then we're just gonna say first ... last. All right, so you got your first and last here. Let's go back, and now we're going to use this URL shortener, or wallet address shortener, on current account. Let's import our bad boy, shorten address, and make sure you import it from the right place. Okay, so let's just go ahead and import it from utils/shorten address. That's where we've put it. And then we're just going to call our shorten address, pass it our current account, and we should be Gucci. There we go. Look at that. We got it, right? You can see it right over here, and you can see that we have went from this to that. Beautiful. So we're done with shortening stuff. Now we are going to work on our transaction form so the users could put in stuff and then, be able to pay other people. Let's go. All right, now time to make our transaction form. This is what you're going to be building by the end of this one. Okay, so we're going to be building this form. Now, yes, it looks ugly, hideous, but don't worry about that. We're going to initially build it without styling, and then we're going to make it look pretty. Okay, so don't worry about that. I'm going to leave this bad boy kind of like floating here for reference as we go through this. And yeah, let's rock and roll. So I'm going to go into app.js. Okay, and inside of here, let's go ahead and, all right, so I'm going to add in transaction form here, okay? If you don't have main container, activity container, make sure you add all of these here as well, okay? But transaction form is I'm going to be adding. Now, obviously, it's going to give an error. It says transaction is not defined. So at this point, you know what the error is, right? You know what this means. If you see that error, clearly you didn't import something. So just go ahead, start your import process. We're going to go ahead and do transaction form. And we're going to grab it from our transaction form component that we have made. Now I want you to go ahead into your transaction form. Okay. And all right, so we have the transaction form here. It should be pretty much empty. Let's go ahead and build it out now. Okay. So we're going to grab transaction.module.css. All right. So now that I've got my transaction styling, let's go ahead. I'm going to create a div, and in here, we're going to say container. Okay. And then we're going to grab, make an H3. It's going to be form title. And we're going to send payment and request. It says styles is not defined. Okay. Let me go ahead and fix that. Styles.form title. There we go. And now it's starting to show up. Okay. So send payment/request. Next up, I'm going to create a form. Inside of there, we're going to have a form container. Inside of there, I'm going to have a swap container. And then we're going to add in our switch vertical icon. And you'll see what this, so this icon is this bad boy right here. Okay, so just keep in mind, this is what we're making. Okay, this is the target. So we got a form container, we have a swap container, right? Then inside of that, we have the swap icon. Now we're probably going to write swap to/from. Okay, so just remember, this is our reference point. Okay, let's go ahead and do styles.swap text, and it's going to be swap to/from. And now we can see it on our screen. That's looking good. Okay, let's keep going. I'll put this here because I think this will be fine there, not in the way of anything. All right, and then we're gonna create a form body here. Okay, and then inside of there, we're gonna add in a form input container. Okay, and then we're gonna give it an h4, and the h4 we're gonna say form input title. Okay, and we're just gonna say to. So who are you sending your money to, right? That's where that goes. And then the next part we're going to be doing, obviously, is going to be this message part. Okay, so that's going to be also an input. The type is going to be text, and we're going to have autocomplete false. All right, let's keep going for input container, and I'll get rid of this, move it over. And this is going to be an h4 as well. Form input title, and we're going to say amount. Okay. And we're going to have input here. Okay, and class name for this one is going to be form input, and type is going to be a number. Okay, so once you choose a number, it will give you, just make sure autocomplete is off on there. And instead of amount, we're going to say message, and instead of that, we're going to change it to text. Okay. And then underneath that, we're actually going to make our amount. So let's go ahead and do form footer. Let's give it an h4. I'm going to say footer title is amount. So there we go. Amount is showing up now. All right. And then we're going to have a div here, and we're going to put a footer container. And then I'm going to put an amount container div inside of there. And then I'm going to put an input container inside of that. Okay. And we want to put an icon here, currency dollar icon, which is this icon right there. Okay. And then we're going to do styles.dollar icon. So now it's showing up on the screen. You should be able to see it. Okay. I'm going to get rid of this guy here for a second. Okay. Next up, we want to make this look a little bit better. And then we want to make our send button. So I'm going to paste the same input styling, except we're going to change this to a number. And there we go. Since we added our form input styling, it fixed it and made it wider. I'll hide myself here. All right, so now I've changed it to a number. And then what I want to do is I want to create a button, and this button is going to be send. Okay, and we're going to make it a send button. That's the styling I'm going to give it. Okay, now it's looking much better. Make it type submit. And when it comes to our form, you know, this is what it's looking like right now. That's about it, okay, for our form. So if you got to this part, great job. You've done an amazing job. Now, next up, we're going to be working on the activity header. Let's go. All right, next up, that right there is what we're going to be building right now, the activity header, okay? So this is going to be a lot of fun to build. And I hope you're going to learn a bunch of things out of this. But with that said, let's get to it. Let's start building that bad boy, okay? So I'll bring it right over here so you could have like a frame of reference here as we build it. And let's go. So I'm going to go into my app.js, and I'm going to hit import activity, okay? And then let's open up our tabs here. And in files, you can see I have a folder called activity, and then I have activity card, okay? So let's go ahead and import that. So I'm going to go ahead and import activity card from /components activity card. Okay. All right. So now it's been imported, and now we're going to start building this out right over here. Let's close everything out. All right. So I'm going to pop in my activity card here. Okay. Pretty soon it will actually start showing up, and I'll leave it just here as a reference. So let's go into our activity card, and now we're going to build it out from scratch. Okay, so let's go ahead and import styles from styles and activity module.css. Okay, make sure you do // because we have to go back out 2 directories. Okay, then we're going to return a container, and then inside of that div, we're going to have another div, and this is going to be a tab container. Okay, and then in there, we're going to put a p tag, and we're going to have a tab title activity. So that's going to be this part right over here where it says activity. Okay, so boom, right there, it's showing up. Okay, after activity, we want to add in a class name, and we're going to do styles.navigation container. Okay, inside of that, we're going to add in navigation item, and then we're going to do data-current. So just so you understand what this data.current is, that this is how it will give it this active styling over here. Okay, so that's how we do that. All right, let's keep going. I'm going to make a globe icon. Let's go ahead and import it from the top. So we're going to globe icon from here icon /react /outline. And then we're going to go and do styles.navigation icon. Okay, just like this. And then let's create another div here. We're going to give it a class name, and I'm going to say navigation item. And in here, we're going to put a user icon. And just so you know what this icon will be, it'll be this icon right over here, right? Globe icon is this guy here. User icon is that guy. Okay, so once we add in that icon, let's go ahead and we're going to add another navigation item. And this one is going to be a user group icon, the third icon. All right. And you could see all of these being added here. Okay, so let's go ahead and boom, it's showing up. That's great. Let's go all the way at the bottom. We're going to add another div. And for this, I'm going to give it a styles and say feed list. Okay, let's go to our index.js. And here I'm going to remove import from index/CSS. So I'm going to remove the global styling that we were doing everywhere. And I'm going to change that. And we're going to go ahead and say, go into our styles and grab our global.css. So now when we do that, boom, look at that. The entire app styling is looking beautiful. Our form is looking beautiful. So that global styling there fixed almost everything. Okay, so now when I full screen it, look at how much better that looks, right? That's beautiful. And like our target that we had here is matching what we've built there. So with that said, we are done with this activity header part. Great freaking job. And next up, we're going to work on our transactions. Let's go. Quick thing that I want to highlight. Earlier when we created that send button, the problem that was happening with that was it was like overflowing and doing all kinds of weird stuff. So I just need you to go in your styles and go into your transaction styles, transactions.module.css, and we're just going to change something inside of our container. So here for our container, we're just going to make the width 400 pixels. Okay, if you didn't have that already, change it to 400 pixels, and then you shouldn't have any problems whatsoever. You should be good to go. Okay. All right, let's keep on going now. So now our button looks really good. Our send button looks awesome. No problems anymore. Okay, let's now go to our context and get to work on setting up our smart contract. That's the big main thing that we need to do now. Okay, so we're going to keep track of some states. So let's just define all of those here. So the to address, we're going to keep track of that state. The amount, we're going to keep track of that state as well. All right, so we're going to keep track of this amount state, obviously, right? Let's keep going. Default it to 0 because it's an amount, it's a number, it's not a string, so we're not going to have it empty. Message, we're going to leave the message blank to start off with. Okay. We're going to keep track of our loading state. And obviously in the start, it's false. It's not loading. And we're going to keep track of our transaction count because we want to know how many transactions we have. Okay. And yep. And by default, we're not going to set it to 0 or anything. By default, what we're actually going to do is we're going to pull it from local storage. Okay. So that is a very clean way of doing it. We're going to pull it from local storage. So when a page refreshes or whatever, by default, we're going to pull it from local storage, and then otherwise we're going to pull it dynamically. Okay, now what we want to do is let's go down and we're going to check if transaction exists. We're going to create this function, And this is really a getter and setter function that we're making here. Okay, so let me write that down here. It's going to be a getter and setter function. And what this function will really do is we want to get transaction count. So, okay, so this is here's another way of saying this, right? Get and set transaction count. That's what this function really does. So what we want to do is we want to get the transaction count, and once we get it, we want to set it in our local storage. Okay. Now, where are we getting this transaction count from? We're going to be getting this transaction count, right, from our back end, our blockchain smart contract part. All right. So that's what's really happening here. Okay. So let's keep going with this function. Check if transaction exists. We're going to go async on this bad boy, and it's going to be a try catch. And we're going to say, hey, if we have Ethereum, meaning if, so this is saying if you have MetaMask installed, then go ahead and do the following. Then we're going to go ahead and create transaction contract, and we're going to create the Ethereum contract. Now, this is going to be a helper function we'll create in a second. So don't worry when it gives you an error. Don't freak out. Not a big problem. So let's go ahead and actually create this Ethereum contract function now. And really, this is just a boilerplate code for connecting a smart contract that you've made on the blockchain side to your front end. So we're just doing that connection part right now. Okay, so let's go ahead, and I'm going to set our provider, and we're going to choose the MetaMask as our provider. So we're going to say Ethereum. Then we're going to get our signer, and this is going to be our provider.getSigner. So this is whoever's signing the contract, meaning like the logged in user with the MetaMask. And then what we want to do is we want to get the transactions contract. Okay, and so let's go to ethers.contract, and we need to give it our contract address. Okay, we need to give it our contract address, and we need to give it our contract ABI, and we need to give it our signer. And then we're going to return this transactions contract. Okay, so now contract address and contract ABI, those are things that we're going to go ahead and set it up. So let's go and get on line 3, let's go ahead and import contract address from utils/constants. And then we're also going to go ahead and let's go to our, let's see where we're at. Let's go to build. So we're going to our backend blockchain part. Let's go to build, and let's go to transaction, and let's copy that. So what we've copied here. All right. So what we've just copied is all of the contents inside of that transactions file. Okay. So we're just going to create that same file inside of here. Okay. So let's go and now paste all of that. Boom. There we go. So now that I've pasted it, so just copy, right click on utils, right? And you're just going to hit paste. It's going to paste the transactions.json that we copied over earlier. Let's go to our constant.js, and we're going to go ahead and say export const contract address, so we get access to this. And then we're going to do the following. Okay, we're also going to import ABI inside of here from our transactions.json, and we're going to export our ABI, our contract ABI, so we have access to it in our other file. So make sure you do abi.abi at the end. Let's go to our context. Okay, and inside of there, let's pull contract address and contract ABI. And now let's scroll down to our check if transaction exists function. And here we're going to do the following. Okay, let's go ahead and do current transaction count, and we're going to await this. And I'm going to say transaction contract dot transaction count. Okay, or sorry, dot get transaction count rather. Okay, this is the function that we have on the blockchain side. So I can show you that. Let's go to our backend. Let's go to our contracts. Let's go to our transactions here. And boom, you can see our get transaction count. All right, so we got the transaction count on our back end, right? That's what we're interfacing from our front end. So that's freaking exciting because we're literally going from our front end, going to our blockchain part, using the blockchain Solidity function to get the data, retrieving that, and then putting it out on the front end. I mean, I don't know. That is pretty freaking cool. Like, that's super, super exciting, right? So that's why the await promise needs to happen, because we're doing a bunch of stuff asynchronously here. And then once we pull that bad boy, we're going to go ahead and in our local storage, we're going to set that item, and we're going to say transaction count. All right, so now we got our current transaction count. Okay, so we have our current transaction count, which is we get our account first. So then current transaction count becomes a number, like let's say 8 or something. And then we, on line 70, right, we set in our local storage and we set the key with transaction count and we set the value to that. Okay, so whatever that may be, 8 or 5 or whatever, however many transactions have happened. Okay, and that's looking really, really solid to me. Okay, and then now let's go to our use effect hook that we created earlier where we added check if wallet is connected. Now let's go ahead and add check if transactions exist. So basically anytime we refresh on our page, that function should fire off and work. And you could also check in your console log what it's returning, and it'll show you it's returning like a number, okay, however many transactions you have, like 3 or 4 or 5 or whatever. Okay, so with that said, now the last part that we want to add to this is we want to fire off this use effect hook every single time transaction count changes. And the cool part about this is whenever there's a new addition, a new transaction that occurs, your page will automatically refresh and show that transaction. Okay, so that's what's happening. Great job on that. Now, the next thing that we're going to add is the ability to send money, send Ethereum. Let's get to it. All right, time to send some money. So let's get into it. Okay, so let's go and add the ability to be able to send money. Okay, this is going to be important. And when I say money, I mean Ethereum. So let's create a function. We'll call it send transaction async. Okay, and here's what we're going to do. We're going to add a try catch block here. And if it's an error, then obviously just show an error. Okay, if it's not an error, then try. All right, so here I'm going to say, hey, if MetaMask is installed, then I want you to go ahead and add in this transaction contract and create it. Okay, so we're just going to create the transaction contract. And then what I want to do is I want to have a parsed amount here. Okay, and we're going to do it with Ether's utils. And I'm going to parse the Ether and I'm going to parse the amount that was passed. So if the user gave us a certain amount, we're just going to pass it in here. So that utils parse Ether amount, what that's really doing is if I go here online to a ETH-convert, so just go to ETH-converter.com. And here, if I put in like a small amount of ETH, like 0.001, it'll convert it to Wei. So it'll convert it to whatever Wei that is. Okay. So that's really what that function is doing. Okay. Because remember, there's no floating amounts. There's only integers. Then I'm going to request. So I'm going to wait Ethereum or MetaMask in this case. And method is going to be send transaction. And we're going to give it params. Params is going to be an array of object in this case. And we're going to say, we're going to give it a from address. All right, so here we go, right? So we put our gas, just for gas, just put 0x528. All right, so this basically right here, 0x528 is just a short, nice way of saying something like, hey, I want to pay like 21,000 Wei or whatever in gas to just cover some basic amount of gas. Okay, that's really what it is. And then just choose value parsed amount. So we got our from, which is a current account, which is this bad boy right here that's logged in. The to is going to be whoever fills out the form, or like whoever we're sending it to for the form. We're just going to pay this amount of gas every single time. The value is going to be the parsed amount. And then we're going to turn it into hex. All right, so that just converts it to a hexadecimal. That's it, but we don't really need to worry too much about it. We're going to create a transaction hash, and that's going to be from the transaction contract, and we're going to do .add to blockchain. Okay, so basically, that's where we're doing, send transaction. Okay, that's really what we're doing. And we're going to pass in our address to our parsed amount, our message, and then, yeah, that's pretty good. Okay, those are all of the things that we're going to send. Then we're going to set is loading to true while that's sending. And then we can say loading, and then we're going to put a transaction hash. All right, now what we want to do is we want to await the transaction hash here and just do transaction hash.wait. And then once we're done with that, we're going to say success transaction hash. And then we want to set the loading to false because loading is done. We're done waiting for it. And transaction count at the end is going to be updated. So now we're going to get the updated transaction count. Okay. And then once we get that, we're going to set the transaction count to whatever the new transaction count is. And we're going to convert that into a number. So it comes as like a big int or a big number. So we just typecast it to like a regular number and then we're fine. And then we're just going to do this window location reload thing to make our app more robust. And then we're going to add a else here. And I want to say, if that doesn't work, then no Ethereum object. Okay. Meaning like no MetaMask or whatever, and doesn't work. Cool. With that said, we are done adding that send functionality. Now it's really just adding in the UI, the beautiful front end for the form. Everything is ready to go. And then we should be able to send money and see everything. Okay. Let's go ahead and do that now. All right. Now the functionality we're going to add is really where we add real functionality to the form, meaning that when you actually put in an address and you put in a message and you put in an amount, it will actually open up MetaMask and then ask for you to confirm, and then you're actually able to send the transaction. So that is the functionality that we will now add. With that said, let's get into it. So let's get started from where we had left off. We created our send transaction function. Now all we need to do is make sure that in our context, we actually pass it. So the rest of our app has access to send transaction function. So go ahead and do that. And then I'm going to go into my transaction form. And inside of my transaction form, we're going to use our use context hook and get access to the transaction context. And I'm going to destructure send transaction function from there, set address to, and set amount hook. Okay. And the amount hook and message, set message, etc. Right. So we're just going to get access to kind of all of that stuff. And we need to send that stuff over too. So just make sure you copy all of that and you paste it here. So you want to make sure that in your context, you're actually passing all of that information, right? The set address to hook, the address to set amount hook, amount, state, set message, all of that. Okay. So we're going to go ahead and do that. Okay, cool. Now that we're doing this, let's go ahead and make sure that we write our handle submit function. Okay. And in this, we're going to take the event. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do is prevent default. And what that does is it makes sure that you don't refresh. The page doesn't refresh once you hit submit. And we're going to say, hey, if the address doesn't exist or amount doesn't exist. All right, so we're going to say if none of these exist, then just do nothing. Okay, just ignore that. Okay, we only want this to work if those exist. And so basically this is like a guard clause that we're adding here. And then if none of those are true, then obviously we're going to send the transaction. Okay, so the transaction is going to send when these things exist. Okay, and then we're just going to, for the input, for our form title, we're just going to say value is the address to. Okay, so that's the address to right here. And we're going to say on change, we're going to set the address to whatever you're typing in the to. And then we're going to do the same thing for our message. And then we're going to do the same thing for our amount. So right now we're working on our message. Okay, value on change, same idea. And then we're going to do the same thing for amount. It's going to be literally the same pattern. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that for amount. On change, set amount, target value. Okay, good old React stuff. And if you're wondering, yes, my hair did change. Okay. I went to get a haircut in between the shoot. So shout out haircut gang. If you saw this, not most people will make it to this part, but if you're one of the lucky few, good job. All right, let's keep going. Let's wrap up this entire bad boy that we've written in a form, and we're going to add a handle submit to that form. Okay. So the function essentially that we created right here. So this form is going to be looking for when you press that juicy send button. When you send that send button, I meant to say when you click that send button, your send transaction or whatever function or handle submit function is going to run. Okay. But let me ask you, is it going to run right now that this is empty? I'll give you 4 seconds to answer that. 4, 3, 2, 1. No, it will not. Well, the function will run, but it won't send the transaction, right? Because there's nothing here. So that won't happen. But if you have all of these filled out and then you hit send, will it run? I'll give you 4 seconds to answer that. 4, 3, 2, 1. Hopefully you said yes. And yes, if you have it filled out, it will send. So let's keep on rocking and rolling here. And let's open up our console on the right-hand side. Okay. And then we're going to go to our code. Just on change with the capital C. Okay. So that's where the error was coming from. So just make sure it's a capital C that you have. Cool. All right. Now it looks like it's working. Now let's go ahead and type in our to address. Ignore my dog. She's a little baby bulldog. She's wild. All right, there we go. We got our to address. Sometimes, you know, I order Uber Eats. They show up at the door to drop the food, and then she just starts barking, and I'm sick and tired of having to edit that out. So you guys are just going to hear what I hear at my house every day. So if you got to this dog barking part, feel free to comment that as well. And yeah, let's write our message. Have a great day. And we're going to put in some amount, and we're going to hit send. And now notice that it is opening up MetaMask. How beautiful is that? Let's hit confirm. There we go. MetaMask is popping up. I will make myself tiny here so you can see confirm. Boom. Look at that. And the loading transaction hash is showing up too. That is nice, right? That was real clean. And there, the transaction has taken place, right? And if we go to the other account where we sent this money, it looks like we got the ETH. So we are now able to send money. I mean, 99.9% of the functionality of our Venmo app is complete, you know, functionality wise. But now we still got to make sure that we render the recent activity and we show all that stuff. So I hope this was exciting to you. I hope this enlightened you. And with that said, let's keep on rocking and rolling. Next up, the component we're going to make is this guy right over here. Okay, this is going to be your recent activity / recent transactions component. So, you know, who's making the recent transactions, right? This is what you see on Venmo as well. So let's go ahead and work on that component now. Get rid of this here and let's go. I'm going to pop this in. The purple thing in the back is not really what you're actually going to be adding. Okay, that's just like interesting looking padding that I added. But this is the part that you're actually going to be building. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure, like, I wanted to just make it stand out. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and work on this now. All right. Let's go into our activity card.jsx. And inside of my activity card, let's go and import my context from React. And then the next thing I want to do is I want to get my transaction context from my context file. We'll get shortened address from utils. Okay, it's going to be /utils /shorten address. Yep. Just like that. And then we're going to pull transactions and current account from our context. Let's go and get all transactions. Inside of our context, let's go and get all of the transactions. So it's going to be async. It's going to be a try catch here. We're going to console log the error. And then we're going to say, hey, if MetaMask is installed, I want you to create the transaction contract. And we're going to create the Ethereum contract. Once that's done, we're going to get the transactions. Okay, so we're going to say const available transactions, and we're just going to await the transaction contract, and we're going to call the get all transactions function, which is on our backend. Okay, so in our blockchain part. So if we go to our transactions.sol, you can see we have get all transactions right there, and it's a view function, and it returns the transactions. We're going to say get us the structured transactions. All right, so basically structured transactions, all we're doing is we're transforming the data that we're getting. And so I'll kind of explain to you what I mean by that, right? Let's go ahead and write this. Okay, so we are now just going to pull our address to from there. And this is the transaction receiver. Okay, that's the who we're sending it to. Okay. Next up, we're going to get our address from, and that's the transaction sender. And then we have our amount, or actually in this case, let's just do our timestamp. And let's call our time ago that we got imported or added earlier. All right, and we're gonna say .format. Okay, and I'm going to create a new date in here, and we're just gonna put in the transaction. Okay, .timestamp. So each transaction will have a timestamp from the blockchain, and I believe the blockchain puts their transactions in Unix. All right, so there we go. You heard that confirmation in there. Our developer confirmed with us that it is Unix. Our developer being your boy Kevin, and basically, if you pass it that Unix, right, and you give it as a number, and we pass it to new date. All right, so what the multiplied by 1,000 shenanigans is because you're getting okay, here. It's annoying. You don't really need to worry about it, but I'll tell you anyways. You're getting Unix in milliseconds. So in order to turn it into Unix in seconds, you multiply that bad boy by 1,000. Now it turns into Unix seconds. You give the Unix seconds to your new datetime object. It turns it into a datetime object. Then you call time ago format on that datetime object, and it knows how to turn it into a time ago naturally, written language, kind of like here, where you're seeing 23 minutes right there, or 31 seconds right there. That's what time ago does. Okay, there we go. All right, so we're gonna say comma mini here. All right, the mini is a time ago thing, so you can give it mini. So that means that it's instead of minutes or mins, it's going to say M or S for seconds. Okay, there we go. And then message, we will call it transaction.message. Okay, so now that it's restructured like this, or AKA transformed, you won't have to loop through it and go transaction.receiver, transaction.sender. You can actually just loop through it and go .address to, .address from, .timestamp. So it'll be much cleaner. So your code won't look like transaction.receiver. Pass in your amount, we'll parse int, and we will give it the transaction amount in hex, and we will divide it by 10 to the power of 18. So if you're looking at this and you're like, what kind of ninjutsu garbage is this? I'll explain real quick. We are going, my friend, from way... This is like the ugly stuff about blockchain. I don't know why they do all this trash. Like, this development experience is going to get better at some point, but that's what it is. Right now it's in Way, and we're converting it to ETH. So remember when we went from like a really tiny 0.002 number and we turned it to like a 10 billion Way number when we went to ETH-converter.com? Well, now for the front end, we got to go from Way back into ETH and show it to the user. Okay, so we're reversing that. All right, hope that makes sense. Okay, let's keep on rocking and rolling. All right, and then we're going to import time ago from JavaScript time ago, and we will also import en from JavaScript time ago locale. Okay, and then we're going to add that locale to the time ago, and we'll say time ago, and we'll make it a ENUS. Okay, so then it'll look like American time zones. Okay, and time ago, if you're looking for it, right, in your package.json, we have it either added, and if we don't have it added, we can just go ahead and install it now. Okay, so in our command line, we're going to go ahead and say npm I, and we're going to go ahead and say JavaScript, and just do dash time ago. Beautiful. Hit enter, and now it will install it. All right, so basically now, guys, we have it installed. Okay, and once it's installed, your time ago is going to work. Okay, let's keep on going through this. All right, let's go down, and we're going to add our use our set transactions hook that we got earlier. Okay, or actually, let's define it here. So I'm going to say transactions and set transactions, and in the start is going to be an empty array. Okay, it's going to be an empty array. And then what we're going to do is we're going to set the transactions to structured transactions. And else we're going to say no Ethereum object, okay? And in our context provider, make sure you also export this value. So we're going to say transactions. Let's pass it to our app so we have access to transactions everywhere else in the app. Now, inside of our activity card, you can see that we're extracting transactions. All right, guys, so there we go. Okay, so now transactions will make more sense, right? Because we're pulling it out because we actually have access to it. And now this feed list that we have inside of that feed list, we're going to, all right, so we're going to go ahead and do transactions.map. And now we just want to loop through and render those transactions out. This is like mainly the front end part here, okay? So we're going to go ahead and destructure an ID, an address from, our timestamp, our message, our address from. All right, so we destructured all of this stuff. ID, address from, timestamp, message, address to, etc. And then we're going to also get the index. Okay, so we got this, right? Now we're looping through this. And now let's go and render this out. So I'm going to do an implicit return here, right? Arrow and then parentheses is an implicit return. Okay, so there we go. Now class name. So key is going to be the index, right? That's why we pulled the index when we were looping. And then we want to give it a class name of feed item. For this here, class name here, we're going to give it a styles.avatar container. Okay, and we're going to give it an image, and it's going to be an avatar image. And for source, we're going to generate random avatar. All right, guys, so now, generate random avatar obviously doesn't exist, but we're going to go ahead and create that now. So let's go ahead and do generate random avatar. And this function, it's going to work in the following way. We're going to say random avatar, and I'm going to randomly pick a number between 1 and 1,000. Okay, I'm going to be using this as my seed number, and we're going to use this Dice Bear API, which is very nice. Okay, and we're going to pop in the random avatar. That's how we're getting this, by the way. This is using the Dice Bear API. Okay, that's how we're getting all of this. And how it works is you give it a random seed. So we're just going to give it a random avatar plus current account, and we're going to say .svg at the end of it. Okay, and there we go. All right, so now it will generate a random avatar every single time. And make sure we're going to create another div, and this one is going to be feed details. So the point of this is so we can actually see the details part. Okay, so here we have this feed details is going to be obviously the details part that we're going to be adding to this. Okay, and then we're going to have a feed author. That's where we're going to put the wallet and shortened address. So there we go. We got the shortened address. So we're going to put the shortened from address, and then we're going to put the shortened to address. So that will say, from, and then it'll say to. Okay, so there we go. That's very nice. And then what we want to do is we want to add a span tag here, and we want to do created at. So this is going to be our timestamp here, where it says 23 minutes or 31 seconds, etc. And we're going to put our timestamp there. Okay, right here. We're going to put a globe icon right next to it, just like this. So that's why we're doing this globe. Okay, and let's go class name. We're going to go styles dot feed author, or sorry, dot feed body in this case, actually. And for the feed body, we're going to add in a message. So this is the message like, have a great day, or thanks for the ether. All right. Perfect. All right, let's make another div. And for this one, I'm going to give it the feed CTA. So this is going to be the call to action, or these buttons like and comment, just like how we have on Venmo. And we're going to give it a heart icon, and we're going to give it a like icon for that one. And for the next one, we're going to give it and just so you could see, right, there we go. That's the heart icon. So I'll leave this here so you can kind of see the heart icon and the other icon. Or actually, let's put it here. Why not? So you could see it. Okay. So we got the like icon and then we got the comment icon. All right, let's go ahead and refresh our app. Let's see here. Actually, let's go to our activity card, or sorry, let's go to our context here. And inside of our context, I'm gonna go to around line 47 where in my check if wallet is connected function, and we're gonna get access to all of our transactions. Okay, so let's call that function get all transactions. All right, and let's just make sure I'm gonna full screen and let's check here. If it's pulling it through, it's giving us an error. It says cannot read undefined. Okay, so hold on. Let's see what's going on here. All right, let's look for it. All right, so it's actually a typo here. So amount._hex, it's amount._hex on line 140. So that fixed it. There we go. We're getting all the transactions and our transactions are showing up. I mean, that is nice. That looks beautiful. Okay, that looks great. And you could see, oh, wow, you could see, right, address from, you could see address true, the amount sent, message, and timestamp, and all of that is showing up here. So this is really, really good so far. Let's go to our account 1, and we're going to copy, okay. I'm going to paste the account 2's address so we can send them the money. We'll put in a message. Thanks for the ether. There we go. And we will put in some ETH. And let's go down and send it. Let's hit confirm. It says loading, so you could see that right away. Okay, let me hide myself so you could see loading right away. There we go. And once the loading is done, we could speed it up, right? Once the loading is done, boom, right there. There you go. Now the transaction is showing up. How freaking beautiful is that? That is fantastic. So great work on that so far. That is wonderful. And with that said, we're done with this part. At this point, we're pretty much done with the entire app. We're just going to put the finishing touches and we're good to go. So I'll see you in just a second. All right, so now we're going to pretty much just be demoing the app, but you might have noticed that I have this add thing here. Now, this is pretty much just React. I'm not going to go ahead and build this out. This is going to be a challenge for you to build out and add to this app. If you get stuck, you can always just check out to the main branch, because if you did NPX Clever Programmer, right, for this project, you can check out to the main branch. That always has the full solution. Right now, you're on the CLI starter branch, so you are doing this from scratch yourself. Okay, so if you can always switch there and then code, find the solution. But I would say you know everything you need to know at this point to be able to put this together, okay, or make a ad looking thing similar to this. And you should give it a try, okay? You already have the assets and everything like that. So I'm just gonna go ahead and demo the rest of the app. So like, let's just play around with the app, right? And let's just make sure that it works. So I'm gonna go right here. I will click into account 1. I'll try to send some transactions over to another account. Let's go ahead and refresh the page. You could see the avatars changed, right? The logos, the random generated avatars have changed. We're pulling in the transactions. The timestamps for the transactions are showing up. I'll put in a new address here. We'll put in a message, and then we're gonna go ahead and put in the amount. Let's see if it works with emojis. Okay, so I'll put in an emoji here. No emoji showed up. Oh well, let's hit send, and let's go ahead and hit confirm. There we go. We'll go ahead and hit confirm. And look at that, it's loading, right? And let's see. Okay, and account 3 or account 2, yep, the money has gone, and without even refreshing the page, you can see that it says 26 seconds ago, thanks for dinner. All right, so there you go. That is your entire app. So with that said, I really, really freaking hope that you enjoyed building this from scratch. I hope you get to deploy it. I hope you share in the comments that you did it. I mean, I'm really excited that you were able to follow along, build this. You should be very proud of yourself. If you enjoyed this video, smash that like button, turn it white, turn it blue, depending on if you're using dark mode or light mode on your YouTube. Subscribe to the goddamn channel. I love your beautiful face. This is Kazi, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.